I'd like to welcome Professors Kate Fletcher and Mathilda Tham to the stage. And I am going to start,
Hi, Kathy.
I'm going to start by asking you both a question that's come from our last speakers of the afternoon, who are Rhiannon and Evie from Commonwealth Theatre. And they just said that they would enjoy hearing you kind of introduce yourselves to us all by telling us something about your favourite item of clothing. So I'm going to leave you with that lovely question, and I'm going to exit the stage, and then it's over to you. Thank you for being here. Enjoy it.
Thanks, Kathy. Wow, what a great introduction. Hello, everybody. Favourite item of clothing? I think it would have to be, for me, it would have to be a pair of trousers that are hanging in there still after about 20 years of endless repairs. But maybe the reason why I like them so much is that they've both enabled me to go and speak in Parliament and also to shin up a tree. I think something that combines the two is pretty special.
Hello, I'm Mathilda Tham, and I think my favorite item of clothing is a kind of house frock, like a home coat. Is that the word? Yeah, house coat, yeah. And I have worn it everywhere, and I think it's from the 50s. And actually, it's so old that the fabric is starting to perish, but I mend it over and over again, and it's green, and it has this kind of floral pattern, and it makes me feel that it's always spring around me when I wear it. It's lovely.
So just by way of extending the introduction beyond our garments a little, my name is Kate Fletcher. I'm Professor of Sustainability, Design and Fashion at London College of Fashion in the UK. And
I'm Mathilda Tham, and I'm Professor in Design at Linnaeus University in Sweden. I work at Goldsmiths in London as well.
So we are really honoured to have been invited by Kathy and Atlas of the Future, and of course to be part of this incredible festival, the Department of Dreams. And what we're going to use our little slot for this afternoon is we're going to use it to ask the questions of this project, Earth Logic, that we've been working on. So we're going to ask questions of Earth Logic that we would like to be asked. So just give me a minute while I share the screen, and then we're going to give a short presentation.
So sorry about that, everybody. I think we're back now. And that was the first techno glitch of the 6 days. So we have to say that's pretty good. Are you there, Kate, as well?
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, many apologies, but we're back and we're just going to carry on. So we were just talking about Earth Logic, and I was asking Mathilda, how did the Earth Logic project start?
And I was saying it's kind of started a long time ago, because we've been working in this field of fashion and sustainability since the mid-90s. And we have been working with hope and joy, but growing increasingly frustrated, sad, angry, fed up that so little is happening so slowly. And we have seen replication of research going over the same problems again and again, and that change is not directed at the place where change should be directed and not at the scale that it should. So a year ago, we had an opportunity to do something, and then we wrote Earth Logic as a way to, we hope, accelerate conversation and work. And I think after that, it would be appropriate, Kate, to ask you, what is Earth Logic then?
Earth Logic is a radical invitation to business, to the research community, to the media, to education, to citizens, to governance, to put Earth first and to transform the fashion sector. It's an action research plan for fashion that gives us advanced starting points. It leaps over much of the tried and tested ground of small change and instead really begins to deal with the big issues. And it combines research and action together at the same time. And it also brings together industry and citizens and the media and all different components all at the same time, trying to get people together to collectively move and shift for big change.
I'm thinking that this is a festival that's about sustainability, diversity, social justice in many ways, and we are talking specifically about fashion. Could you say something about what the problem is that we feel that we need to address with Earth Logic? Why is it so urgent?
So for a long time now, we've known, for more than 30 years, we've known that the fashion industry is a source of many deep and profound, disquieting environmental problems, and also issues to do with workers. And many people have been attempting to moderate the negative effects of the sector by, for example, substituting one fibre for the other. But what we see over the course of this 20 and 30-year period is that all of these changes added together are not substantial enough to accelerate faster than the impact of the growing sector. So the sector is growing in size, and the cumulative impacts of the sector that is increasingly increasing in size are not substantial or greater than the benefits of any efficiency gains. So what we need now is systems change. And what we would like to ask is, what does systems change mean for fashion, Mathilda?
Yeah, so we want to address the system where it hurts, and currently we can say that the growth logic, the logic of economic growth, is driving fashion more than anything else. And we think that it's important to kind of understand system changes in context. So we have created this image of kind of fashion nests. And if we look at the, are you able to move slides, Kate? Yes, there we are. So if we think about the product level of fashion, making changes there, that was we could look at that as a kind of first generation of approaches to sustainability in fashion. And it would be things like replacing conventionally farmed cotton with organic cotton. And this is great, but benefits here are very easily eaten up by the ever increasing volumes. And then if we move up to system change, we can see things like new business models, shifting from products to services, changing in law and policy, as well as hopefully changes in relationships. But again, if the sector as a whole keeps growing, we won't have a net reduction. So we really think we need to move and direct change at the real level of the paradigm. And that is where the purpose of the whole fashion sector is set. And currently, this is very much the logic of economic growth. Without change here, the sector will keep growing and at best getting worse more slowly. But if we change from growth logic to earth logic, we can also imagine how new patterns and ways of relating with fashion and the world can flow.
One of the things I think we know from trial and error, and also from more general life experience, is that this sort of work isn't easy, and it requires us to stay with the trouble of trying to foster change. Can you describe what role staying with the trouble plays within Earth Logic? So
staying with the trouble is a term that we have borrowed from the fantastic feminist techno-scientist Donna Haraway. And you heard us right. What we are thinking about is a really big leap and big change, and that's a big ask of all of us. But at the same time, if we continue along the line of growth logic, we are not going to be able to make the changes we are needing. And staying with the trouble, it really means commitment to purpose, which is saving the planet, even when this causes friction, awkwardness, anger, and hard work. And we are not naive. We've been in the change game, so to speak, for a long time. There is a lot of resistance to paradigm change when you try to challenge growth logic. And people will try to ridicule you. They will try to direct the attention elsewhere, what's sometimes called whataboutism. But we still need to stay with this logic. And one of the key questions here today is being able to combine an environmentally safe world with social justice and making sure that people still have livelihoods. But to think that we can keep going like we are, that's really not possible. But we also see that it's very different today. So whereas before people like us and other people with similar ideas would be called illogical, today many people think that actually business as usual is illogical, because after all there is no business to make on a dead planet. Can you say something, Kate, how we built Earth Logic? So what is in there? It is a text, right?
Yeah, it's a text that is able to be downloaded from the website, earthlogic.info. And it comprises 3 parts that build on each other. So it leads with part 1, which is a framework of values. And this is really important. This really grounds the work, this gives it direction, and this places it within a radical future. The second part is a checklist for work to keep it on a radical track. Too often research sort of lapses into sort of slow development and produces work that sits on library shelves gathering dust. But the point of this work is that it's applicable in all our lives today, in all business contexts or domestic contexts today. And so the second part of this is a checklist that helps us make that happen. And then the third part, it comprises 6 different landscapes. We call them holistic because they stitch together a view both of life, of productive activity, and still all this time staying well-dressed and engaging with fashion systems and processes along the way. We are just going now to, here are the slides that would have supported that. So the first is the values explicit context, of which care is a really critical part. The second is the research checklist. And then the third is the 6 holistic landscapes. We're going to give you a flavour of 2 of them really quickly now. The 2 we're going to choose to focus on today is the first one, less, and then the third one, plural.
And for each landscape, we give a kind of flavour of the life. Once we genuinely understood that we could no longer live in a resource fiction, things changed quickly. I look back at my time of shopping for clothes almost on a weekly basis, and I do remember some thrills, but mainly anxiety and restlessness. There would be a sea of clothes on the shop floor and a sea of clothes on the floor of my kid's bedroom. We do different things now. Fashion is a pleasure, but in a slower and more grounded way. It is a relief to live for the future in my choices. I thought my kids would be upset when I said, no more fast stuff, no more squishes. Let's keep what we have got going. Instead, their adaptation was faster than mine, and they do value us sharing more time together.
So this landscape, as we call it, this set of project ideas that spill out of the values of Earth Logic, this landscape of less is the largest provocation associated with the transition to sustainability. And we think that here lies the greatest temptation of all for the fashion sector to veer into the realm of the techno fix. Yet only by staying with the trouble of less can the scale of change deemed necessary be achieved. Instead of procrastinating, with incremental reductions. Instead, we need to face the reality of less and address the real socioeconomic problems that growing out of growth creates. This, of course, includes employment in the textile and clothing industry, and it's a question that really deserves our focused attention. We need to think about how people are going to earn money, what sort of livelihoods will be when there's less material throughput in the sector. So when we travel in the landscape of less, there's lots of exciting things that emerge. We think about what will fashion lives with less begin to look like, what maybe the drivers for less will be, and what are the stories we'll tell about growing out of growth. At the moment, the only stories we tell are stories of growth. What could they be if they were otherwise? Another one of the landscapes is plural, and a flavour of life in the plural landscape. Imagine an open fashion studio in the park, in the community centre, library, reading group, or cooking class. The fashion studio and fashion school has been turned inside out. Instead of scouting and bringing ideas and resources from outside to fashion and commodifying them, like happens now fashion offers itself to communities, materials, equipment, skills. These are all shared out. And instead of following the rigid fashion cycle and rules, the emerging fashion studios create rhythms, rituals, aesthetics, which are according to the needs and opportunities of the new fashion clients who are also part of the studio. This happens through keen exploration, paying attention to nuance, for example, and carefully layering textiles and clothing with care. Suddenly, fashion voices, bodies, expressions we've never heard from before stir up questions, start enterprises, form new patterns of relationships. When fashion is set free from the Western dominant caste, fashion becomes a lively, opinionated, and generous place.
So in this landscape, we're really interested in what might happen if we could place fashion outside the market. And instead of seeking to shoehorn sustainability goals into an uncompromising sector, we could find new opportunities for fashion in lots of places. And of course, making fashion more plural can take many forms. We can imagine fashion for clients that haven't been prioritized to date, and obviously fashion that really profoundly challenges racism, able-bodyism, ageism, sizeism in fashion. It might strike out a totally new relationship between fashion and nature, where the natural world and non-human species are really represented. And some of the possibilities we are really excited about here are imagining totally different fashion centers, maybe starting at a school or a global community of knitters. And we are also excited about what would happen if we opened up fashion so that fashion companies employed a genuinely diverse crew. What would fashion be like then? So we have been journeying with Earthlogic for a year, Kate. And can you say something about what's happened? How has it been received in this time?
Well, we think that in the last year, we've reached about 1 million people with Earthlogic through the report itself, which I mentioned is downloadable from the website. We've given lots of talks. It's featured in social media a good deal and in numerous media features. What we see is a sense of relief, perhaps, in the people we engage with Earthlogic, and people are just delighted. Perhaps they've been yearning to find a moment or a space to really talk about what matters, to move beyond the small change, incremental shifts sort of conversation and get to the heart of where change lies. And Mathilda, what have we learned since we launched Earthlogic? Are there any key things?
I think we've learned that there is indeed an appetite for tricky conversations today. So it's really changed. We feel that you say that people are quite relieved that that we want to take the take the really tricky questions, stay with the trouble, and not pretend that things are simple. I think we also have learned that we can't wait until things are perfect. We're not perfect today. We won't be perfect tomorrow, but we can't postpone change until we know exactly what we're doing. So I think we've done a lot of winging it this year, and we hope that by doing that, also give confidence to other people to explore before we know it all, and not worry about not being perfect, and also be prepared to take the awkwardness, because when you make a fuss, people are going to get itchy, and that's fine if you think it's worth it. I think we have time for a couple of questions. Do you, Kate?
I think so.
Yeah. So one question here: which of the landscapes you set out in Earth Logic is the most challenging or provocative?
Well, I think when we started out, we thought that less was certainly the most provocative, and I think it is. But I think it's a conversation that people are increasingly prepared to have. And maybe this took us slightly by surprise, because of course the real reduction in volumes is the challenge. But actually, one of the other landscapes that people were very drawn to, but then found very difficult, was to talk about making a shift towards local. And this, perhaps we wondered, we speculated that this might be because that actually when you begin to think about a local supply chain and really begin to make sense of what this is like on the ground, that you begin to see what the problems were. Any other thoughts, Mathilda?
I think that's good. And there are a couple of more questions, and I know we don't have loads of time. So one question is, are we using system theory explicit in our research? And yes, we are. We have studied and worked with systems a lot, and we're very interested in that. So that's and we have drawn a lot of inspiration from Donella Meadows, who was an environmental pioneer and systems thinker, really thought about how we can work with paradigms and mindsets. But then another question, which is, I think, should be our last question, because it's really important. I think you should answer it, Kate, is how can communities take practical action from the plan? So what can people do today?
Well, the action plan itself is full of ideas which are implementable in your life, in a business life today, and also in loads of different contexts. So we included in there a whole range of things. Some of them were more strategic, some were extremely practical. And the idea is that, as Mathilda said already, we can sometimes defer taking action until we think we've got all our ducks in a row, until things are perfect. But what we wanted to show is that actually change is possible and implementable in all of our lives, within the way we dress, and also within the fashion sector more broadly today and now. And so when we're in this department of dreams, the dreams are, of course, things that percolate within our lives. And this is, I think, what we want to do. Clothes represents a really important part of our daily life and dream space. And yet we can elevate those to a place also which cares for both each other as human beings and the earth.